lines are open. Dial 384-2191.
Into the second Friday of the month of September, Friday the 13th. I don't know if I'm feeling unlucky or not, any more than any other day for that matter.
You should be feeling lucky because,
here you are.
Here I am.
Well, hopefully I won't get arrested then.
Well, maybe not that lucky.
Yeah. You can wait outside the door if you get to know me any length of time. Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza here on WDLB Radio, live on the second Friday of the month. You may be watching us in video form here on Marshfield Access, Media Access on Channel 989 on your Spectrum Digital tier, or you can watch us at Marshfield Media Access. Is it the .org? .org, okay. And also on their Facebook page, Marshfield Media Access, as the police chief makes himself available to you and us to talk to here on a monthly basis, opening up the lines of communication. Summer winding down here now for Maple Fall Fest weekend as we're talking. And again, I'm saying this because if you're watching us, it's already over with and you know how it all came out. But this is one of the last big events in the city.
Yeah, it was a busy summer, and there was a time, and maybe there's still some, maybe younger people in the community that say there's not a lot to do in this city, but you look at it, and just about every single weekend, and even a lot of weeknights, there's something going on. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for, and what you enjoy having keep you busy. But yeah, between the fair recently and Hub City and all of the little weekend one-day events. Tonight there's a fall street dance going on downtown where Central between Veterans and 4th will be closed. We got Maple Fall Fest this weekend. We have a home high school football game tonight. It seems like just about seems like there's more things going on than you're able to attend at times. So but it's in a way it's nice that it's winding down, but unfortunately it usually means that it's winding down because of the weather.
Yes, and that will be a situation coming up shortly. As we're speaking to you now here this second Friday of the month of September, the retention ponds are pretty full around the city.
Yeah, we had some flooding this week with some of those torrential rains we had, and yeah, I actually had some friends of ours that had measured, I believe it was Wednesday when we got that real heavy rain, right? Wednesday into Thursday. That I think Wednesday night or Wednesday morning, they had measured over 3 inches on the south side of town. So yeah, it's hard to imagine, but yeah, it doesn't take much to fill the streets up. And
there were some pictures of street closings. Mm-hmm. How does that happen? Do citizens report to you, dispatch, the street department? If I saw something like that maybe needed your attention, how would I go about reporting that?
Yeah, sometimes our officers just come across it, and there's areas of the city that we're aware of that have a high probability of either flooding or just having some standing water present. So usually there's a couple spots on Peach. There's a spot on Galvin Avenue. One spot on 2 spots on Oak that come to mind. So yeah, it kind of depends. We'll monitor those areas that have a propensity to flood. But yeah, at times, we had some individuals reach out to us that called dispatch and asked us to check the area kind of off of out by Hume, and I think it's 25th or Hume and 26th, which is where ODC is, that they said that the road was flooded there and the water was moving pretty good to where they thought that it could wash out or it could pop some manhole covers. So we went out there and I don't know if we put barricades there, if we just confirmed and just stood there just so nobody got stuck. But yeah, once the rain subsided, it doesn't take long for it to drain off. But when you're talking that much rain in a short period of time, it fills the streets fast.
This kind of thing seldom happens when everybody's ready on a regular shift. It's usually nights and weekends. So when you need barricades, do you put in a call you have a number to call for the city garage? Yeah,
we'll get a hold of City Garage. We can call them on the radio or else we can call them by phone. And they have a tendency to listen to our radio channel as well. So if we're calling out areas where there's some, I mean, oftentimes if we ask for them to come out, they're already on their way, which was nice. On Galvin, kind of over by Fillmore, Meadowbrook, when there happens to be a lot of flooding there, that's kind of water getting to the greenway. Oftentimes they know those spots just as well or better than we do. So, I mean, they're often traveling around monitoring all the areas. The lower pond was on the brink of flowing over. It wasn't quite, and there's a small dam that can manually be opened up for the lower pond that was cracked just enough to keep it from flowing over the banks. But as I checked that area on Wednesday and I was leaving, City Garage was coming down there too and monitoring that area. So we're on the same page with a lot of that stuff and knowing what areas to monitor a little closer than others.
Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza here on the Insight program on WDLB today, talking about the situation of the weather and how it has affected you and how we get a hold of you if need be. I mean, getting to places in the case of an emergency, knowing where you can't get through,
right,
is also, you don't want to get there and go, oops, you got to go back up and around the block and come back the other way again.
Right.
You want to know that as much as you can, but things are changing and filling up as you're going.
Right. Yeah, it's good to know those areas so you can avoid them, but it's also good to know those areas so you can monitor them so that other people avoid them. But yeah, if we need to, and all of our vehicles are all-wheel drive now. Not that it makes them invincible, and we know that, but if we need to get through, we potentially could. But the last thing we want to do is get stuck there too and be of no help to anyone because now we're disabled in the stream of water.
Put a boat propeller on your receiver hitch there.
We could, yeah. I guess it'd look bad if we were like waving our arms out our car window asking for somebody to come help us, right? Yeah. So we try to avoid that.
You have to send a snowplow. They got a little higher clearance.
Yeah.
Go out and pick you up.
Right.
Talking with the chief here, you can too, 384-2191, 384-2191. Well, I guess one of the things that we looked at in retrospect now was the fair. Mm-hmm. And the open container situation. How did it turn out in your view? You were the one who has suggested it to the council that maybe it would be okay to do that because mm-hmm. you're the one they look to as to whether or not you should and how you feel about that.
Yeah, it went really well. My officers that were patrolling the fair said that they had no issues. The biggest issue we had, I believe, was having some individuals that didn't have wristbands on, and we just directed them as to where to get wristbands, but it was individuals who there was no question as to whether or not they were of drinking age. We had a couple individuals that carried in beverages, which we just asked them to dispose of, which they did. But at the end of the day, I mean, it went really well. It went how we expected it to. How we hoped it would, and I think that's a message that we tried to send out early on was this is an opportunity we have, but a lot of it falls into the hands of those individuals who are partaking and that they're doing so responsibly. By allowing open containers throughout the grounds, we were hoping that would slow people's drinking down so that they wouldn't feel the need to slam a beer before they went to the bathroom because they can't carry their bathroom out of the tent, where now they could actually walk around with family or walk around to see the sights or go to the restroom without having to worry about having someone hold their beer or them having to throw it out or them having to chug it. So, no, it went well. We didn't have any more incidences than we have in years past. It was a well-behaved crowd, and I'd say it was definitely a success.
In looking back at retrospect here at the Central Wisconsin State Fair and the open container situation, it leads to then the question of what's in the future. Are you still going to have beer gardens fenced in for Hub City Days and Maple City or Maple Fall Fest here where you have events on the main street? Is that still going to be the way you do business, or is it just open container everywhere?
Well, a lot of that is going to be up to the event coordinator or organizer and what they want. We had a We had an event. Well, we have this event this weekend or tonight for the street dance. There was discussions as to whether or not we allow open containers from Veterans to 4th Street on Central Avenue, and the coordinator said that she would rather not. She would rather just contain the drinking to the beer tent that they have planned to set up, which we said was fine. Last weekend was Oktoberfest, and there were some discussions as to if they needed to invest the time into putting up a fence around where alcohol was being served, despite people being able to walk through out Wenzel Plaza with an open container. The only reason that was kind of quarantined off or fenced off is that so people had to pass a checkpoint to get wristbanded, to get carded if they looked underage or looked under 40, I should say, to pay for their tickets or to pay for their collector mug that they received. So a lot of it'll be up to the event organizer. I wouldn't be surprised if as far as the fair goes and as far as like Hub City, that this is a regular thing. I don't know that, like for Hub City, it was just during the car show. The organizers didn't want to open up open containers for the band in the evening. They said they felt based on the level of the number of volunteers they had, because we rely on those volunteers as well to help us monitor the situation. I mean, we might have 2 to 4 officers down there, but if we're talking a crowd of 2,000, I mean, 2 officers aren't going to see everything, especially when you're talking low light or lighting challenges, and it's hard to maybe see wristbands on everybody. And so we rely on volunteers just as much as, we rely on the group's volunteers just as much as they do in helping us monitor and semi-police the situation. So I think right now each event will be dependent on the organizer and their conversations that they have with us leading up to it. But I'm not exactly sure if the process is going to change at all, where I don't know if we'll have to continue going forward to City Council each and every time when the fair wants to try this again, or when Hub City wants to do it during the car show or something else. That's something that we'll have to discuss.
Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza here this first Friday in September about looking back at the summer and the changes in the open container law. People get confused or make the difference between Wenzel Plaza or a city park. You can bring your own. I think where the difference lies so many times is when money changes hands. Now it's a different set of rules here, where if they're providing beer for you at the event, now there's wristbands, there's checkpoints, there's things that have to be adhered to. People say, well, I can walk around any other time with it. Well, that's true, but now you're getting it from a source as opposed to bringing it for yourself.
Right.
And there's that responsibility part of it again. If you bring a cooler and provide it to minors, then you're on the hook for that, as opposed to, because at any one of these events, anyone who's consuming without a wristband on is suspect.
Right.
As to where did you get it?
Right. Yeah, it's still a little confusing, and we even have to pause and think through this a little bit for ourselves, because if the whole property were to be licensed, say the fairgrounds was, there's a difference between licensing a property or allowing open containers in the property. Just because you're lifting the open container ordinance doesn't necessarily mean the whole property is licensed. Only certain places within that property are licensed, like with the fairgrounds, the curling club or the hog line or whatever they call it was licensed. The American Legion, the VFW or Lions Club or whatever, those places that are selling it, those are the licensed places. The whole grounds in and of themselves were not licensed. That's something that the fairgrounds could do, but then you can't have more than one license in those areas. So if the fairgrounds would license their whole property, then like the hog line and the Legion and the Lions wouldn't need a license because they'd be operating under the fairgrounds license for that event. But then the fairgrounds would be on the hook for buying all of the alcohol, dispersing it to those bars or smaller venues and working through it that way. That's where you can't necessarily have those carry-ins as in those licensed properties. If you're just lifting the open container, that doesn't impact necessarily the carry-ins, but you still can't necessarily carry into a licensed establishment. So when we had that open container for Hub City for the car show, we kind of had it from Maple to Chestnut and Veterans on Central, from Veterans to 8th Street or whatever. So that encompassed Mr. G's bar, it encompassed Goodfellas, it encompassed Krabby Dave's, as far as we're covering that for open containers. But we just said you can't carry into those areas. I mean, we made that a rule. So that's where it gets a little confusing. But like for like Fall Fest you have coming up this weekend, you would normally be able to carry in. Fall Fest is keeping their beer area fenced, and they only want people consuming in that fenced area. They don't want people walking around. So in all reality, you probably could still carry into Wildwood Park, unless Fall Fest is licensing the whole park. And if they're licensing the whole park and selling, within the park, and they want to kind of funnel all sales there, and I don't know what their permit says, but if they kind of license that whole park area, then you can't carry in. Even if they're only selling in one area, they may have licensed the whole area. If they didn't license the whole area, if they just licensed this 200 square feet or 400 square foot area, well, then you still could carry in. But I think that really adds to some confusion.
And exactly, that's where, and because when it comes down to is liability.
Right.
If I give somebody a beer out of my cooler, I'm liable.
Mm-hmm.
If they give somebody one and it was consumed or bought on the property, then the vendor is liable. When you get to overconsumption, that's when we start to get into problems as far as where did it come from? Because that's what the people who overconsume are going to say.
Right.
They don't want to accept responsibility for themselves overconsuming. They just want to say, well, they oversold.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's where that liability, and that we go in, and whenever there's those temporary licenses, a lot of those individuals that might be selling or checking IDs may not be exposed to situations like this a lot. So we'll go in and we'll actually offer some free training. The police department will offer free training to those volunteers who are selling or who are serving, and trying to empower them to cut somebody off if somebody has been is intoxicated, or they're fearful of them being overserved, because they don't want that liability. So we kind of go through and talk about a lot of that and give them some good talking points if that's a service that they want us to provide.
Just in general now, you laid out points of at Hub City Days where consumption was legal.
Mm-hmm.
Is it illegal to walk down the street with an open container?
Right now?
Yes.
Yes.
As long as I stay within the park boundaries, I can.
Right.
But as soon as I go out into the street, then that's...
Right. Yeah, if, like right now, if you wanted to go over to Brain Park and sit on a park bench and have a beer, you could. Open containers are allowed at city parks. But not if the park is licensed because of an event. Then it's not. So it's just important to know where you are, what's going on, and it's not like we're going to come and arrest you or say, we're just going to say, hey, you can't do that here, this event's going on. So, I mean, we're going to work with the individual and we're going to work at educating them, but we don't necessarily need to. And again, a lot of it depends on their level of cooperation with us and such, but oftentimes just having a conversation with somebody in that situation is all that it takes. Yeah, if you go to the Columbia Park when the concerts are going on, the summer concerts are going on, and as long as they don't have Columbia Park licensed for serving alcohol at it, you could bring your cooler there and have a couple of beverages while you're listening to the civic band play at the Columbia Park. There's nothing wrong with that.
But when I walk off the park, walk down the street and go to the downtown, to the other park, I can't do that because if I'm sitting in my front yard having a beer, I'm on private property.
Right.
Or even it's property owned by the city if it's the park. But when you go out of the park.
Right. Yeah, so you couldn't walk from one park to the other with an open container. You can walk with your cooler. You just can't have a beer open or a beverage open. You can't be on the sidewalks. You can't be in parking lots or any of the city parking lots consuming that. But you can in the parks, right?
Does that also is the same basic rule for vehicles? You can have. I mean, I'm transporting a 12-pack home, but as long as they're not open,
right?
Anytime there's any kind of a crack in the bottle open, or anytime where it could be consumed, then I'm in violation.
You could be, right? Yeah. I mean, and that's why a lot of people transport alcohol in their trunk because it's not accessible. But yeah, the question would be, okay, you have a 12-pack behind the driver's seat of your vehicle, and there's two cans. There's two cans missing, and there's two empty cans on the floorboard on the passenger side of the vehicle. Would that or could that be enough to, if we stopped you, to cite you for open containers? It could be. If there's even a drip of alcohol in one of those empty cans, in all reality, even if it was consumed
at the park and the cans were thrown in, and
yeah, you could be on the hook for that. Obviously, we're going to take other things into account. We're going to talk to you. We're going to see if you just consumed them or not, or if they could be from 3 weeks ago,
right?
And the beer could be warm in the backseat, that you forgot about or whatever. So there's a lot. We're going to take all those factors into account and investigate it. But then if we smell alcohol on your breath and we see these empty beer cans on the floorboard and we see a 12-pack behind the driver's seat, it's going to, increase our curiosity as to what's happening and where it was happening and if you're okay to be driving.
Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza this second Friday in the month of September. You can too, live on WDLB 384-2191, 384-2191. You may be watching us at marshfieldmediaaccess.org or on their Facebook page, Marshfield Media Access, on video here. So, again, some of these things may have been resolved, and we talked about Fall Fest going on this weekend that we're recording it. There was some, activity here in central Wisconsin that we want to talk about coming up in just a few moments. Don't go away. Insight program here for the second Friday in the month of September on WDLB. You know that if you're listening live on radio, and we're coming to you in video at marshfieldmediaaccess.org or at their Facebook page, Marshfield Media Access. You can see the video of this program as we talk to you the second Friday of the month, and not often that we have activity of active shooters in our community and around this part of the state anyway, although we have had some gunplay not that far away here as we're on the Merriwood County line with the radio station, and part of Marshfield is in Marathon County. Wausau has had some incidents, but your department was involved with a standoff in Loyal. Can you describe what happened and how this unfolded?
Yeah, I can give you just a little bit regarding our involvement. It's Clark County's story to tell, I guess, for the most part, but we were asked to come over and assist. Our SWAT team was asked to come over and assist based on a barricaded individual with a gun that they had been looking for based on a previous day's, I believe, pursuit or pursuit where he may have brandished a firearm during the pursuit or when was within view of officers. They had information to believe that he had gotten back to his residence because he was thought to be either in a field or in the woods, I think on Wednesday. So then yesterday, they had information that he was back at his residence. So we were asked through mutual aid to come over and assist. The main reason was if gas, either OC or CS, gas needed to be deployed into the residence in an effort to take him into custody. We were equipped and trained for that. I believe Clark County didn't have the either equipment on hand, or their individual that was trained in that was not available. So we were over there. We had our armored rescue vehicle over there. We had our SWAT team, which included 2 snipers and I believe 8 individuals from the entry team over there, should we be needed. I last talked to one of our lieutenants who was on scene around 11 o'clock at night, had heard that some shots had been fired, that an officer was thought to have been struck in their ballistic vest by a round, confirmed that it was not one of our officers, and that later learned that the officer was not severely injured. And then I had heard at some point, I saw through messages that at some point during the early morning hours, the individual that the situation had been resolved and the individual was no longer a threat. So I know that our officers got back to the city probably around 5 a.m. They had headed out there, I want to say, sometime around 3 or 4 on Thursday in the afternoon. So they were out there for about a little over 12 hours on this assist. Thankfully, nobody was injured, as far as law enforcement goes. I'm glad the situation was resolved and no neighbors were injured from the sounds of it. I know a school was nearby and maybe needed to be placed on lockdown. I saw that. So I actually had breakfast this morning with the superintendent from Marshfield. It was prearranged from a couple days ago. But we got to talking about situations like that and lockdowns that we go under, and how a prolonged lockdown that may go into the evening hours, when you're talking elementary school or even a high school, how you go about getting those kids and faculty home or out of the building when the threat is nearby but not on site, and just the best ways to work through that collectively between us and the school district. So we had some good conversation this morning about that and how things would be handled, and we've practiced that and we've had those discussions previously, but it's always good to revisit those discussions because you learn from other individuals' successes and failures and what works, what doesn't. And it's all, each situation is so unique with regards to layout of the school and accessibility to vehicles that can safely get to the school to evacuate individuals, or is the incident far enough away to where you don't have to worry about having a coordinated or orchestrated evacuation. You can just operate business as normal. You just went under a lockdown maybe for safety reasons because something was within a few blocks. So each situation is very unique and different, but yet those conversations happen seriously probably on a weekly, bi-weekly basis.
It's the society we live in now.
It is. But I don't want, it's a society we live in, but yet we're trained and we're planning for it. So, it's the new norm, I guess. You could almost say it's unfortunate, but it's a new normal. It's unfortunate that it happens. It's good that we train and practice and prepare for it. And even though we can't prepare for every curveball that a situation may throw at us, the more you think about it and talk freely about it and not be afraid to talk about it, either to your coworkers or to your partners in the community or over the air like we're doing right now. I think it just gets people thinking and it tries to normalize something that maybe 10, 15, 40 years ago would have not been normal. It would have been completely out there.
Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza here on this second Friday in the month of September. You can too, 384-2191, 384-2191, live on WDLB Radio, talking about an incident that occurred in Loyal here where this SWAT team from Marshfield was asked to provide mutual aid with their armored vehicle, and the Suspect was extricated from what I understand, from the residence, and the situation is over with. Your guys were out there for, what did you say, a little over 12 hours, maybe 15 hours,
12 to 15 hours, yeah.
And when something like that goes on, and only certain people are on the team, do you send half home? Do you sleep in your vehicle? I mean,
Right.
you're on, and I don't know how long the suspect, what kind of crank he's doing that he's still awake too. I mean, he might be sleeping in there.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's it's a very fluid situation, and again, so much of it is reactive to what the individual or the suspect's doing, and the circumstances that surround it. I mean, you could how we respond last night when it's misting and 58 degrees is going to be a lot different than how we respond in the middle of February when it's 20 below, and how our officers are equipped and their ability to withstand the elements to what degree. With the proper equipment, we could have one of our snipers probably be in hiding out in the woods or in a field for 24 hours or two, depending on those elements and everything that surrounds them. So, thankfully, I mean, even though we're widespread with our law enforcement, partners, we still had, Clark County was there, obviously. We responded. I know Marathon County was on site as well. I'm not sure about Wood County. I don't know if Wood County came over as far as their SWAT team, but just in the area alone, we've had conversations about, do we in Wood County maybe combine all of our assets and resources and just have a county-wide SWAT team? Because right now, Wood County Sheriff's Department has a SWAT team, Marshfield Police Department, and Wisconsin Rapids Police Department. So we have 3 SWAT teams within our county. Portage County and Stevens Point each have their own SWAT team. Marathon County has their own county-wide SWAT team. So Wausau is a part of that. Clark County has their own SWAT team. So, we have a lot of teams that we train with and that we are familiar with in the immediate area. So even though an incident might happen in the city of Marshfield where we need, where we have eight entry members and 2 snipers, and maybe it's something that we need 30 entry members and 10 snipers on, well, we could probably have them here within an hour and a half to 2 hours, if need be, based on that kind of resources within 45-mile radius. But no, it all depends. It's so, with your sleeping question, we would probably be able to be on site for something like that for maybe 16 to 18 hours. But then we would need to either relieve some of those individuals, or we would have to send our team home. And if the situation, was prolonged for maybe another 24 hours, we'd maybe come back in 12 and finish up then if they needed us.
Well, this situation in Loyal, you mentioned gas being deployed, so I can make an assumption that there wasn't a hostage or somebody, because, see, that's the difference why you'd stay. Why wouldn't you just go in? Well,
Right.
because you have somebody who is being put in harm's way, in danger,
Right.
with your deployment inside. If it's just the suspect himself, that's a different tactical approach to what's going on there. So that told me right there that they didn't suspect anybody was in there with him.
Right. Yeah, based on, and that's my assumption as well. There's times where we may deploy gas, even if there was somebody, a hostage or a victim inside of there, but it all depends on the situation. The gas we deploy is a dry gas. It's not going to ignite and start a fire in the residence, although there is canisters that are meant for outside use only that could start a fire because they're flammable and flame propelled as far as the smoke and the gas that's being let off. Most of the gas that we use inside residences is all a dry gas, and and it won't ignite. That said, though, I mean, more times than not, I mean, we're going to try other avenues, or we're going to go in right away if, based on the intelligence, if there is other people in danger, or, you know, we attempted, I mean, for probably the first, even before we deployed the gas, it sounds like negotiations were attempted for at least 6 hours, you know, if not 8 hours. And even after we deployed the gas, there were still attempts to negotiate, you know, through a PA system on our armored rescue vehicle. So we're always trying to get the individual to voluntarily comply with us and just give up based on the circumstances. I don't have all of the details as it relates to what led to what and why something happened, and you know, but it's again a situation where you learn from, you know, I mean, no situation is going to go 100% flawless. You're going to learn things. You're going to have aha moments in the moment, and you're going to have aha moments 3 days later thinking, oh, that would have been a good thing to try, or that was really stupid that we did that. We're not going to do that again. And I mean, it's, you know, I mean, we have very well trained teams in the region, but I mean, it's each situation is unique in its own way.
Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza. You can too. 384-2191, 384-2191, live on the Insight program, coming to you at marshfieldmediaaccess.org or their Facebook page, Marshfield Media Access. You talked about how many places have tactical teams. Do each one of them then have a trained negotiator with that to show up, or is there a guy? You know, he's, you know, Bert is the guy, you know, he's a 3-county area here. Is he the guy who's going to come in, or is there backup or psychologists, or?
That's assuming you're not available for us, right?
Well, yeah, I could talk him out in no time. Here's a beer.
Lull him to sleep, and then we'd sneak up on him. Right?
You'll listen to the show, right?
No,
we'll just put it on speakers, and then they'll come out. I give up.
Right. Yeah, each of those teams do have crisis negotiators that are assigned to them. We have 5 individuals for the city of Marshfield that are crisis negotiators. We'll usually negotiate with an individual if they're suicidal, or if they're, you know, there's challenges like that, or they're you know, barricaded and having a bad day, and we're just trying to get them to voluntarily comply. We'll usually have at least 2, if not 3 individuals. There'll be one primary negotiator. There'll be one secondary one that is also listening to the conversation, taking notes, maybe feeding information to that individual. And then we'll usually have a third individual that's getting information, doing background, finding, you know, if family is in the area, what, you know, if there's anything that could coax this individual out. And so yeah, it's kind of, in a perfect world, it's a 3-headed approach to having that happen. There's somebody gathering information, there's somebody that's documenting information that's obtained, and there's one person that's actually doing the conversation and talking. And there's sometimes that they don't hit it off with that person, and then we have an alternate that could maybe carry on that conversation as far as negotiating. I mean, if somebody is in a bad place or unstable, mentally ill, they might not want to talk to this guy. They might want to talk to a girl. They might not want to talk to this guy whose voice reminds them of their dad who they didn't get along with, or they might, maybe they even know the officer and there's just some bad blood there, or maybe a male is going to be better than talking to a female because of past things. So, I mean, it's, you never know. Each situation, like I said, is so unique, and they're the same, but they're different. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, the goal is the same, to get them to give up and nobody get hurt, and to listen to what we want them to do, so that we can get them the help that they need. But yeah, I know that Rapids, PD, Wood County, Marathon County, I know that they all have their own crisis negotiating teams that work in concert with the SWAT team, the entry team, the sniper team.
Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza here. This weekend, as we're recording this program, there was a standoff in Loyal, which the Marshfield PD also gave mutual aid with their armored vehicle, and part of your SWAT team or tactical team was also deployed there as well with other agencies.
Yep.
I heard something about a robot on one of the reports. So they tried to go in and take a look around and make sure there was nobody else involved, or what are they trying to do there? Get a lay of the land, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, it could be for a couple of reasons. I mean, if the person has a gun and officers don't want to put themselves in harm's way, they may put the robot in harm's way. Most robots are capable of breaching doors, or like opening doors that are barricaded or fortified. They can either do this with some of them are equipped with a shotgun, some of them are equipped with like a water cannon that can just blast a lock apart or actually shoot the hinges off of the door. Then I mean, it's almost like you're in the building or in the house or in wherever without actually being in there, because of the optics that you're able to see around pretty much a 360-degree look. You could possibly identify where the person is and hold them at bay and at least get people in there to clear the rest of the area. So from my understanding, and I probably read what you read, they weren't able to use the robot to the degree that they wanted to because of the wet conditions, and also I don't know if it was the grade of the steps, that it wasn't able to climb those steps that were at this residence. From my understanding, that's what precipitated an entry team to try to make entry through a garage, and that's where some shots were fired initially. But yeah, attempts are always made to not put people in harm's way. Any neighboring residences or businesses would have been evacuated, or we would have at least told them to hide and stay out of the sight of windows or doors or whatever if we weren't able to evacuate them. Same with that school, like we had mentioned, we put it under a lockdown for precautionary reasons. But our goal is to get everybody out of harm's way. So as soon as we can evacuate houses and buildings and schools, we do it, just so that, I mean, we'd rather have nobody around than people around and barricaded, because there's some people that need medical attention, in their homes and have in-home nursing or something, and you want to be able to make sure that their life isn't completely uprooted for that 12 or 24 hours while the situation is unfolding. So we try to make the best use of people, because we don't need to just be standing around waiting for this person to come out. I mean, there's things that we can be doing as well.
Well, at some point, when you talked about the gases we talked about before and how many hours you're standing there, you're going to resolve the situation. I mean, the only reason it would prolong is if somebody was in danger that was inside, and a suspect had somebody as a hostage or something along that line, that you would maybe hold off, or but otherwise you're going to resolve the situation. It's going to be in your favor, and that's the point. We're going to extricate this person from this residence. You can't wait all day, Right. I mean, you got Meals on Wheels showing up, and it's like, wait a minute, how long is this going to go on here? Right. Let's get this done.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, there's a balance. Sometimes time's on your side. I mean, if the person's in there alone, they don't want to come out, they committed a crime, depending on if other people are in danger. Here you have somebody who's mentally unstable, armed with a firearm, has already shown it to law enforcement. One may question, okay, do we just leave this guy alone and come find him a different day when we can get the jump on him? I mean, right now he knows we're here. But then when he started firing at law enforcement, it kind of changes the game a little bit. And now you have him showing a willingness to potentially injure somebody, or have, to a degree, utter disregard for life of another individual. So it's kind of a game changer at that point. But yeah, I mean, you have to. It's kind of a risk reward type of scenario. And I mean, are you escalating a situation by just being there, or are you actually doing what you need to do to keep the community safe by being there? And if somebody's driving home from the bar and they're intoxicated, and you try to stop them and they run from you, and they're able to get in their garage and close the garage door and more or less barricade themselves in their residence, is that worth calling out a SWAT team and getting them out there, and getting them for an OWI arrest? Or do you just find them 2 or 3 days later, catch them at work, or get them on their way to the grocery store or something like that, and actually perform a stop and make that arrest based on the circumstances you have that they fled from you 2 days ago. So I think based on those situations, you really have to make that decision. Is a risk that we're putting ourselves at by now going into a place or pursuing this individual. I mean, same with any pursuit or a fleeing. If I have somebody with a loud exhaust and I try to stop them and they run from me, is it worth going on a 100-mile fast pursuit, through neighborhoods just to get this guy who had a loud exhaust? Or if I have a license plate and I know who it is, or I believe I know who it is, do I go back and get him a couple days later and not put other people at risk? I mean, it so much of those decisions and everything plays out sometimes in seconds, and you have to make that decision. Or the shift commander has to make that decision based on what they're hearing on the radio and the officer's telling them, because they're not actually on scene. So yeah, it can be interesting. I mean, yeah, and we're talking, kind of full circle on liability and who's now liable. Are we increasing the liability or the need for, are we increasing the danger by maybe now, in a pursuit by pursuing this individual, or is it worthwhile because they're going to hurt somebody? And, now they've shown us a gun, and now it's escalated to an extent to where, okay.
If the perpetrator or suspect shoots like a robot,
sure,
is that the same as drawing down on a officer or a dog? I mean, a dog is basically the same as a badge.
Yeah. There's laws about shooting a police canine. I mean, it's similar in nature to shooting at a human. Not the same, but similar. A robot would probably be more of, just damaging property or criminal damage to property or criminal damage to governmental property. It wouldn't be looked at as the same. I'm not aware of any laws out there that would parallel that with human life or an animal's life.
One last thing here before we go. Speaking of animal, unfortunate death of Portage County or Stevens Point canine.
Yeah, I heard that.
Did you, anything from the Marshfield department, did you attend the services, or were you asked to help in any way? Or
we weren't. I had heard that it may have been poisoned or eaten some mushrooms or something that were not edible. And yeah, completely unfortunate situation. I know that our canine officers in town here train with that dog and with that handler, and knew it well and knew it to be a very quality dog, and had definitely made an impact in the community. So they'll be missed. My understanding is that they'll be replacing that dog too. So I don't know if it'll be with the same handler or not. But yeah, I mean, it's a tragedy that it happened. That you hear of those things happening, whether it's a dog that consumes something because they're a dog and they're curious. I mean, even though they're trained and they're probably more highly trained than 99% of the other dogs out there. They're still dogs and they're still curious and they still play and they still get hungry, and this looks good. It might not smell good or taste good, but it looks good. And you hear it, unfortunately. I mean, I'm not going to say it's even worse, but it's worse when you hear of a dog dying in a car and it's a canine, and the sensors, because there's sensors that the handlers have that let you know what the temperature inside the vehicle is, because the dogs often stay in the vehicle with the vehicle running. Well, if the air conditioner stops working, or the officer forgot to turn the air conditioner on, or the windows didn't automatically go down when the temperature hits a certain temperature like it's supposed to, that's a tragedy as well. And unfortunately, that happens a number of times every year in the country.
Just in a round figure, what does it cost to replace a canine unit?
About $25,000.
All right, I'm out of time. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for talking.
Rick Gramza, live here on AM 1450 WDLB, the second Friday in the month of September.